Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask Donna, Martinez, and Rufus, Edmisten. In July, 30% of North Carolina adults with children reported they were behind in their rent or mortgage payments and couldn't afford enough food for their families, according to the Census Bureau. Congress has been unable to come up with more relief funds. What do you think should be done to help these families struggling in this time? Donna?
Well, I think each of us needs to step up. That number to me is heartbreaking and really shocking. When you think about that, essentially 1 out of 3, that means that every one of us here on this panel probably knows someone who is in this situation, really teetering on the margins. Number one, it's just one more reason why we have got to make sure that we are reasonable and balanced in our approach to COVID, that we are protecting the vulnerable, but we are letting the people who are at a very low risk go back to work, earn a living, support their families, and be able to do that while they're protecting others in their family and in their community that are more vulnerable. You know, it's also a terrible consequence of COVID that because we haven't had that one-on-one direct connection with people at our clubs, at our churches, for example, I think we're a little bit removed now, and we may not understand like we would have before that someone who's sitting next to us in church is really in need. And Tom, I can tell you that I grew up poor, and I know that it was our church that really helped my family survive. And it wasn't because someone came to us and said, well, do you need help with groceries this week? No, that wasn't the way it was done. And maybe, again, I'm old school, but I kind of would like to see us get back to a situation where you don't ask someone if they are in need because there's a pride question there, and they won't want to admit it. But you go to them, like happened to my family, week after week, and say, you know what? I made some extra. Why don't you take it? I don't want this to go bad. Things like that. We've got to get back to more of a sense of a one-on-one connection. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we're seeing that connection has been broken.
And Donna, I got to tell you that I will never forget that when this virus first started on our show, you talked about volunteerism and helping each other and how important that is during this time. And we get so wrapped up in all the other aspects of this, I think we forget that sometimes. But it's a message that we need to keep saying. Rufus, what's your take on this? What should be done to help this 30% of the people?
Well, I'll harken back to my comments about this young lady, Mackenzie Hinton, who at 10 years old started a food pantry in Mount Olive, North Carolina, and is now 16 years old. We got to have more and more of that. It's like Donna says, you got to go from the heart. I remember when I was a boy growing up, and that's a lot longer than anybody on this panel or even the moderator, we would grow extra crops in the garden just to take care of the needy, for no other reason. And my daddy would drive around in a pickup truck after he'd worked all day long as a wildlife protector and deliver corn, beans, cabbage, everything you can think of. Nobody seemed to go wanting back in those days. Now, this was a small rural community around Boone, North Carolina, but that can still be a great example today. And I like, somehow, there is nothing like the power of a church. The Three Forks Baptist Church never let anybody go hungry when I grew up as a boy. Now, I'm going to get a little bit of trouble here, I'm afraid, and maybe it was somebody that I shouldn't get in trouble with. But it seems like our churches, before they start building huge complexes, magnificent spa-like gyms and things like that, ought to take care of the needy first. I don't know how you get all the churches and nonprofits together in the country, but if you ever figure out a way to do that, you wouldn't have this kind of thing saying a third of the children in America go hungry at night. It's like Donna. I can't conceive of that. I think it's a horrible thought in the richest nation on the earth.
You know, and part of the issue here, and Donna, I think you alluded to it, and Rufus too. We don't belong to Ruritan clubs and to Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and organizations like that anymore. We're not joiners and haven't been for many, many years. And church attendance since the 1950s has been on a decline. These were the things that helped us see and understand needs and organize to help fill them. But the message, I think, is loud and clear. Right now is a time when your neighbor needs you, your a friend needs someone to help them to run errands, perhaps needs someone to help them bring food. And this is terribly, terribly important, and it's something I think we need to keep in front of people's attention. And I thank y'all for talking about it. And I thank you for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.